Today we're going behind the scenes in the music world to talk to a producer. She's a mixer and songwriter nominated for a 2024 JUNO Award, Jack Richardson Producer of the Year, but first made history a couple of years ago by being the first woman to win a JUNO Award for Recording Engineer of the Year. Hill Kourkoutis, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking at everything that you do, and I was listening to all the songs that you have sampled on your website, and I'm thinking, how many hours do you get in a day?
It changes from day to day, but I get in a solid work day every day,
So are you working an 8-hour day or 10, or is it you're always doing like 15-hour days?
I used to do 15 to 20-hour days, which I try not to do so much anymore. I try to have a normal 8-hour day, and some days are more than that. Some days are less. I also, on top of making music, I'm involved in a bunch of other stuff as well. So, the day is kind of split up between meetings and creation.
And I see that you do writing, you produce songs for kids' TV shows too, commercials, and you have your own music too.
Yes, I haven't made my own music in a while, but that's definitely something that, when I feel inclined to express myself in that way, I definitely take that plunge.
And then you're doing other things with music organizations, you're mentoring and doing educational, teaching people how to use audio. And you went through school for visual, didn't you?
Yeah, I never went to school for music because I guess at the time I thought my only option was a performance-based program, and I was terrible at practicing any of the instruments that I played. So, when time came to go to school, to post-secondary, I went to film school at Toronto Metropolitan.
And your studio, The Lair, is in Toronto.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, how many instruments do you play?
I'm going to say I'm a jack of all trades, but master of none. I started on guitar and then piano, and then I taught myself how to play bass and drums, and I sing. So those are kind of the primary instruments, but I'll kind of pick up whatever's around and figure out how to play it by ear if necessary.
How did you learn that you were this musical? Like, you started pretty early. You had a band, when you were 13? Yeah.
I started a band with a bunch of girls at my school because I wanted to have a band like the Go-Go's. But we essentially, that's when that started. I think I begged my parents for a guitar from as early as I could remember. I think I was around like 4 or 5, maybe. Nobody in my family played any instruments, but I do remember I was around 3 years old, and I was at a Greek cultural event in Toronto, and I remember seeing a band playing, and I remember feeling like I wanted to be up there doing what they did. So I kind of snuck on stage, and I stole a tambourine, and I pretended to, play along. And that was the first distinct moment where I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. Yeah, and then from then I just begged my parents, and finally they realized I was never going to be a great dancer because I was the embarrassment at the dance recital. And and then they got me that first guitar, and I didn't stop after that.
How did you work your way up? Because equipment-wise, now you've got your own studio, and I can just imagine all the different kind of microphones that you have in the studio. So you start in music, have a band at 13, and kind of walk me through how you added to what you're doing now.
Okay, this is so loaded, but I'll try to give you the Cole's Notes version. But I guess in terms of the recording aspect of life, when I was in that first band, I started to email all my favorite artists because at the time they had contact emails on all their websites. And I just asked for advice on how to get into the music industry. And so a bunch of them responded. And then one of them was Andrew Franey from a band called Smoother. They were from Hamilton originally. And he called into our band practice and then offered to record a demo for us. So he actually brought his PC tower to my parents' basement, and he recorded us in my parents' basement. And that was a kind of huge light bulb moment for me, because up until that point, I thought that you had to go to a recording studio to record. And so he was using this open source software called Cool Edit Pro. And then I was like, you know what? I think I want to start doing this. I want to record all these ideas that I have in my head, because whenever I'd write a song, I would always hear all the instrumentation and everything. And then slowly after that, it was a marathon, and it happened quite organically. I started getting asked to, write songs for other friends of mine. Then I started getting asked to play in live touring bands for other artists, all while I was kind of slowly developing this bedroom production setup for my house. And yeah, it wasn't very sophisticated at first. It was just like my PC and this free program. I think I had an early version of Fruity Loops, which is now a DAW on its own, but at the time it just made beats. And then I had a computer mic, and slowly over the years, as I started to work with other people, work out of other studios, I saw what they had, and my interest grew in all the outboard gear, all that fancy hardware that exists in studios. And so over the years, I've just kind of created this digital hybrid setup of a studio for my own setup.
To get into other things, like not just producing, like you've accompanied like Serena Ryder and The Weeknd musically, but you do music videos as well on top of all of this.
I used to do music videos. Unfortunately, it was spreading myself too thin to continue going down the video route. But yeah, while I was in film school, Serena had asked me to direct one of her music videos, and I was like, are you sure? I'm only in my second year of film school or something. But she was very adamant about me submitting a video treatment, so like a concept for her. And yeah, they ended up loving it, and they ended up giving me that first chance. And I happened to be an executive assistant at a film production company that I was working at part-time while I was in school. And the executive producer was like, well, if you're going to direct, then I think we need to represent you. So that's how I got into music videos for a while.
You've done so many different kinds of music. I'm thinking, what is your favorite kind of music, or do you like everything and that's what gives you the ability to produce all these different genres?
I definitely listen to everything, I including genres I don't work in. Like I've never produced classical or a jazz record, and I love that music as well. But yeah, I don't necessarily have a favorite type of music. I think what moves me most is working with an artist, and hearing their storytelling. And that's what usually draws me to a project. And it kind of all grows from there. But I think that's why it's such an eclectic mix of music. It's not necessarily a genre-focused thing more than it is being drawn to artists and their songwriting.
And you worked with A440. They're a cappella, so you weren't even working with instruments when you worked with them. How did that go?
That's a deep cut. That was amazing. It was interesting when they came to me, because they're like, we really want you to produce our music. And I was like, you do realize I've never produced an a cappella record in my life. But I think that kind of worked in our favor a bit, because they came to me and they didn't sound kind of like a barbershop quintet or anything. They sounded like a pop act. And they wrote these mega pop tunes. So my, goal was to try and produce something that felt like it had, the whole spectrum that you would hear on a pop recording. But we were definitely limited to voices, which I thought was kind of exciting, So we started approaching everything as we would, recording a big band. And I started thinking about the range of the voice, and even with the beatboxer, because they had a beatboxer in their band, instead of just getting him to beatbox straight into a fancy mic, we were trying to find ways where we could create all those layers that you would get to play with in a mix, only strictly with voices. So it was quite a creative challenge, but in an amazing way.
And with the beatboxer, you have sound coming from everywhere, like their nose, their neck.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, it was interesting because when I love to tell the story when I do talks about engineering, because there's all these rules that we think are in place when it comes to recording things. And I had this beatboxer come in. It was the first time I had recorded a beatboxer, and I set up a nice mic as you would with a vocalist and just told them to start, doing their thing. And I remember there was something kind of off about the energy of the performance. It wasn't quite translating. And even sonically, I wasn't quite sold on it. So I kind of came out of the room and I got him to just beatbox in the air. And I started to notice that he needed to move in order for him to really get into it, which you couldn't do, standing in front of a mic on a stand. So I had a handheld condenser microphone that I put in his hands, and of course I could hear his hands rubbing all over it. So then I went and got a sponge and I duct taped it to the mic. And then I started to hear all of these sounds coming, as you said, through his neck. There's a lot of those subbier frequencies that I started hearing. And so I was like, man, I got to find a way to kind of start miking up different parts of his body. So that's what I did. Long McQuaid was down the street from my studio. I went in, I got a lavalier mic, which is usually used for interviews and stuff, but I just kind of duct taped it to his neck. But then I started hearing all those beard stubble and that wasn't going to work. So then we went to Shoppers Drug Mart, and, you know, I was like, in the name of your art, do you mind sacrificing your beard, you know, and like shaving it a bit so that we can get this sound? And he was totally amazing about it. So yeah, that was really interesting, because we ended up kind of miking him as you would a drum kit in a way. Obviously there weren't as many pieces to worry about. And then just to get a bit of the room dimension, I threw up some room mics. And then afterwards, I got him to actually overdub individual hits of like kick and snare sounds, which really helped us kind of get a really huge drum sound in the mix, even though it was just a voice, which was really cool.
That is really cool. The Junos are coming up March 24th, and you're up for another one. When you won Recording Engineer of the Year, was that your first Juno?
Yeah, that was my first Juno. I produced other projects that had won Junos before, but that was the first Juno in my name.
What was the feeling like at the Juno Awards that night when you won?
I mean, it was pretty surreal. I honestly was not expecting it. But yeah, we definitely had a lot of fun, and yeah, it felt like a celebration for sure.
You're going again this year, and you're up for the Jack Richardson Producer of the Year. I just want to wish you all the best with that, and to say thank you for taking the time with me today. You're our first producer.
Wow, I'm so honored to be the first producer on your podcast, and thanks so much for reaching out. I've really loved chatting with you.